Welcome to Take Another Look, a current events and public affairs program bringing you news and information you can use. Do you know who your state representative is? Do you know what they do and what they are responsible for? Do you know how the decisions they make affect you? We have with us today State Representative Will Davis, and he is going to deliver important information that I believe you will find very useful. Representative Davis, welcome to Take Another Look.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule, going up and down Springfield here, back and forth, your old schedule. Thank you for taking some time to talk with us here on the show. So let's just start with the easy stuff. How long have you been in office?
Well, I'm actually in the middle of my eighth term, which means I've been in office now for 15 years, first elected in 2002 and sworn in for the first time in 2003.
And what led you to a career in politics? I mean, sometimes there are people who say, you know, I went to this particular speech and I was inspired. And sometimes it's the people who say, we want you to run for an office. And sometimes it's just a commitment to service that leads people in the direction of political office. Was it something like that for you?
Well, I've always thought that my pathway involves something in public service. And each employment opportunity I've had up to this point has kind of lent itself toward being in public service. But more specifically, after graduating from college, I worked as a college admissions counselor for a number of years for Southern Illinois University of Carbondale, where I graduated from. And that was a great job. Got a chance to get out into communities, talk to young people about their futures, going to college, particularly Southern Illinois. And I wound up doing that for about 6 years. And then when I left, went back and continued work on my master's degree, an opportunity became available to work for then Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. So I applied for a job with him and ultimately got hired, and wound up spending 5 years in his district office out here in the south suburbs. So I would say it was my work with him in particular that led toward my desire and wanting to be an elected official. And the congressman was kind enough to support my interest. When the right opportunity came available, I decided with his support to run for office, and I was successful, and I had the opportunity to serve in this capacity ever since.
So during the time period when you were a Saluki, did you run for office? Were you part of the student government? Were you politically active at that time? And then when you got out, or were you just experiencing, college?
Well, no, I was just a regular student, but I participated in some student activities, not in student government or anything like that, but just some student activities. But my degree is the degree I received at the time was in political science, so I kind of had some interest back then. But what I learned in college then has really no relevance to specifically what I do now in terms of the process and how it happens. But learned about politics in a very broad way and had an opportunity to dabble a little bit in comparative politics between different countries as well as international relations, which was really of interest to me. But when I graduated, and part of the challenge was I wound up graduating in 3 years. So I finished a year early and was kind of unclear about what to do after graduating. So I enrolled in graduate school and did that for a semester and a half. And then ultimately I decided to take a job with the university. So again, as I moved forward, I would say more of my work in the congressional office probably led toward me being elected today.
So geographically speaking, and I've heard you mention this at speeches before where I've heard you talk to crowds, what area are you responsible for?
Okay, well, I'm state representative of the 30th district, all out here in the south suburbs. I represent the communities of Riverdale, Dalton, Harvey, Markham, Phoenix, Dixmoor, East Hazelcrest, Homewood, Flossmoor, Oak Forest, Midlothian, Posen, Robbins, and Blue Island. And more specifically here in the village of Dalton, I represent the community from Chicago Road heading west into Harvey.
Okay, that's good information. How long did it take you to?
Well, that's the only way I can say it.
Right.
If I start anywhere else, I'd never get it right.
Right. So in a language that everyday viewers can understand, what types of decisions do you make on a regular basis that affect their lives?
Well, as a state representative, constitutionally, I technically only have two functions. that of the laws, which means that we introduce and create new laws, or we change some of the existing laws based on, the times that we live in, whatever the case may be. And the second major function, which I think may be the most important function, is that of the budget. As legislators, we are appropriators. So we appropriate the specific dollars that then go out to the different state agencies, other offices and departments of the state. And then it's up to those departments to then, handle the resources that we offer, and then provide programs, pay personnel, things of that nature. So really, laws and budget are our two main functions. But when you take a step back, what's important, as I've learned in an office like mine, is that when someone calls your office trying to address their problem, often their problems are not necessarily dealing with the state government, but they call and we want to do the best job that we can to be a resource and provide information. But particularly what I think maybe your viewers really need to understand is that when they are dealing with a state agency or a state department and they run into a problem, and we hear this often, and I go, well, who did you call? And they say, well, I didn't know who to call. Mm-hmm. Well, again, if you look at the different levels of government, from the federal government to state government, to county government, to township government and municipal government, based on where your problem is, whoever represents you specifically in that area, that's where you should call. If you have an issue with the federal government, Postal Service, workers' compensation, U.S. workers' compensation, Social Security, those are federal agencies, federal issues, you should be calling your congressperson. If you have problems with the state, maybe you applied for a program in the state and you haven't gotten a response back, or you applied for a license here in the state of Illinois. You're a professional, so you're looking for your professional license from the state of Illinois. And when you run into those problems, then you should contact someone like me or whoever represents where you live. But you can contact either your representative or your senator. Doesn't matter which one, both of us have the same authority in that respect to ask the agency to give us a status of that application, that license, or whatever that problem is. Often, sometimes, and it's unfortunate that we may have loved ones who are in the Department of Corrections, but when there are issues there in the Department of Corrections, your loved one wants to be transferred to another facility, your loved one is dealing with some challenges in there, but because we're talking about the state correctional system, if that person is having a problem and we can identify that they live in our district, if they're having problems, they should reach out to us as well. Municipalities reach out to us. There are certain funding opportunities that come from the state government that whenever they're in jeopardy or talked about being cut or whatever, municipalities should reach out to us as advocates for whatever that funding stream may be coming to the state. Many of the roads that we drive on are state roads, and the state is responsible for paving them, repairing them, reconstructing them whenever that opportunity comes up. So again, when you think about the breadth of the state, whenever you're having an issue with the state government, that is also when we should be contacted by constituents. So again, that's not the constitutional duty of a state representative, but we know that it's the community duty of a state representative to be responsive to the needs of their particular community, writing support letters for not-for-profit organizations that are trying to do business with the state via grant programs, contractors who are trying to be vendors with the state, to do business with the state. Sometimes they run into challenges. We need to know what those challenges are so we can help be advocates for them to try to get the problems worked out. Now, if you're applying for something at the state, I can't direct the state to give that contract or to give that grant. But again, we can try to be advocates because we want those resources to be in our communities, just like they're in other communities of the state. So we're advocates in that respect. And so we can be advocates for any and everybody that calls our office. And again, because we have relationships, sometimes we can try to make things happen a little quicker in some cases. Or if we get to the right person and they go, well, let me look at that. And then they look at it and say, oh, we just didn't do this, or we just need one more document. Well, we want to make sure that they get that document. So again, whatever that application is can be approved as quickly as possible.
That's great information. So you mentioned earlier the budget. And of course, we've all followed the news. Many of our residents follow the news about the budget issue here in Illinois. So what types of things, if our residents are looking at this, what kinds of things are they seeing happen or not happen that are related to the budget issues in Springfield?
Well, every year we're mandated to pass a budget. a balanced budget. That's what we're mandated to do every year. Unfortunately, we've had some challenges getting to that point over the last couple of years. And it took, courage from, legislators on both sides of the aisle to say, we want to pass a budget because we want to make sure that services are funded here appropriate in the state. The community-based organizations that are providing services get the resources that they have been granted in order to provide those services. State universities, who rely on a portion of their dollars coming from the state, were suffering. And we almost got to the point where a couple of our state universities were literally on the verge of closing because the state had not passed a budget. When we did finally pass a budget, the recovery has been a little slow. Because we still need to work to make sure that the dollars get out in the community. The spigot opens a little bit, but it doesn't just open wide. There's still processes that we have to go through in terms of making sure that those organizations, entities, municipalities, anybody that was supposed to receive funding from the state, we want to make sure that they're getting their funding. But that's been a slow process because we're gotten so far behind. In our backlog in our bills. We have a huge backlog that, catching up is going to take a little time, but we're only able to do that because we ultimately passed the budget. So when we think about our responsibilities moving forward, if we're not passing a budget every year, what we saw over the last 2.5 years, we saw services decline. We saw organizations close their doors because those dollars weren't flowing.
Absolutely.
If we're not passing a budget every year, what we saw over the last 2.5 years will continue to happen. No matter what we do, no matter what kind of conversations we have to come together as a legislature, pass a budget, put it on the governor's desk, and we hope that the governor will indeed sign whatever bill that we pass.
Now, of course, with your responsibilities as a state representative, you are a part of committees and you have responsibilities there as well. Is it a seniority thing when you are appointed to committees? Do your peers recommend you to be a part and over or in charge of committees? Which are you a part of? Which do you direct? And how is that process? How do they determine which ones you'll be on and which ones you'll?
Well, we have a lot of committees in the House. Mm-hmm. Not quite as many in the Senate, but we have a lot of.
Hope
committees.
I didn't confuse everyone with the way I asked the question.
No, we have a lot of committees, yes. And if anybody wants to know what our committees are, the General Assembly website, which is www.ilga.gov. They can find out a ton of information on that site, learn more about the members and the districts, yes. What committees we have, who the chairperson of those committees are, the members on those committees. They can research bills that have been introduced and find out the status of those bills and read synopses of those bills to learn and understand what they do. But every member elected has the opportunity to be on as few or as many committees as they choose to be on. To become a chair of a committee, though, right now our requirement is that you have served at least 3 terms. So when you get to your 3rd term, which will be your 5th and 6th years of service, you can then have the opportunity to chair a committee. And it's still seniority based. So looking at what committees are available, the speaker who is in the midst of that process and making those decisions calls each member and says, okay, if you're 3 years, here are the committees that are available that you may be able to chair. If you don't like any of those, you're welcome to actually create your own committee that deals specifically with an issue that is of importance to you, or maybe even particularly to the communities that you represent. But other than the speaker calling with regard to chairmanships of committees, we get a list of all the committees, when they meet, the days and times that they meet. And you have the ability to pick and choose as many committees as you like. Now, generally, you don't want to pick committees that overlap because you can only be in one place at a time.
Yes.
But when you get that list, it lays out all the committee schedules each day and what times they meet. And you have the ability to, again, pick as few or as many as you feel that you can handle.
Are you a chair of any committee presently?
Yeah, being in my now 8th term, I've had the opportunity to chair committees. And actually, I wound up chairing 2. So the first committee that I chaired, that I still chair, is called the Special Committee on Health and Healthcare Disparities, where we have the opportunity to use that as a platform to talk about specific instances of diseases, particularly those that have a disparate impact on communities, whether they be minority communities, gender related, whatever the case may be, or because they only attack a certain group of individuals. Yes. We've used that committee in the past to talk about to talk about having a trauma center here in the trauma services here in the south suburbs.
Yes.
We've talked about the incidences of cancer, particularly breast cancer, that impact African American women. We've talked about lupus, which has a growing presence in the African American community as well. We've even talked about Alzheimer's using that committee, where we've had subject matter where we bring in experts and talk about it, but we talk specifically about how they're impacting particular minority communities, and then we engage our Department of Public Health to say, should you be doing more to provide more information, more access where you can get treatment if need be, or just get information about these specific instances, not only what you put out into the broader community throughout the entire state of Illinois, but also having someone on staff whose responsibility it is to kind of monitor and keep track of that particular instance of disease and what's happening with it throughout the entire state. So I really enjoyed chairing that particular committee. And then about 8 years ago, I was given the opportunity to serve as the chairperson of the Appropriations Committee for Elementary and Secondary Education. So one important word that your viewers may or may not know is that whenever we talk appropriations, we're talking money.
Okay.
So those are the committees that have the responsibility of directly impacting the budget in whatever the state agencies are that fall under that jurisdiction.
Okay.
So as the chair of K through 12 education, I only oversee two agencies: State Department of Education, or the Board of Education, if you will, as well as the Illinois Education Labor Relations Board, where they have the responsibility of trying to deal with disputes, particularly those between school districts and teachers. But while I only have two committees, the portion of the budget that I oversee is actually the largest portion, with the most of those resources going to the State Board of Education. And those are the dollars that are dispensed to school districts so they can then provide services to our children, as well as money toward daycare centers as well. I oversee approximately with the State Board of Education, I oversee approximately $7 billion of our tax dollars that we then go through a process by which we determine how much is made available for schools, and then using a formula distribution, those monies go out the door. Now, we were fortunate enough in this last year to actually put forth an effort, something that we've been trying to do for a long time, but we were actually successful this time, where we reformed the way that we fund schools here in the state of Illinois, where we're able to take every school, look at them differently based on where they are, who they serve, the communities that they in, and then from that using and also weaving into that how much available local resource they have from the property taxes. We were able to develop a formula that creates an individual adequacy target for every school, which means that the schools in Dalton may have a higher adequacy target than the schools, say, in Tinley Park or in Orland. That adequacy target is the number that suggests this is how much that needs to be spent per child to receive a quality education. So that new formula sets schools in order, with the school that has the largest distance from where it's spending now to what it needs to be spending, all the way down to the schools with the lowest amount. So again, unlike before where we looked at every school being the same kind of in terms of the level of funding, now we're able to look at schools differently. And not only have we created the individual adequacy targets, which again would suggest that every school needs a different amount of money in order to educate its children, we have an evidence-based funding model, which is a way that we're able to kind of track and follow the dollars that go to the school districts differently than we've ever done before. Whereas before, every school would get some money and then the state would just kind of step away and say, you go spend your money. Now, at the end of the day, we would be looking at the outcomes based on testing.
Yes.
And we may have questions, but because we weren't really tracking the dollars, we really don't know why that school's outcomes were different than this school's outcomes. So this new model, this new funding formula gives us the opportunity to track the dollars, and it gives us a unique look, a transparent look into the district, so that when we ultimately measure the outcomes, we're able to say, okay, your outcomes didn't improve over the last couple of years. Let's take a look why.
Yes.
And we recognize the different challenges that a community may have, even that the children may experience in the community, even before they get into the schools. But this formula allows for school districts to say, I need more social workers, I need more teachers, I need more instructional coaches, whatever that school district needs. This is the ability to get more money down those lanes, but also gives the state an opportunity to track how that money flows to the school district so that we can then go back and look at a certain point and say, you're getting more money, have your outcomes improved? And I say more money because this year, this is the most money that we've put into schools in recent years, where we're adding an additional $350 million to our funding formula to go out to schools. So no school will receive less money than they had in the previous year, but schools will see significant increases in the dollars that they are receiving, and we hope to be able to keep that up for the next 10 years. In order for us to get to where we think we need to be full funding wise, and we're looking at a 10-year plan, but the great thing about it, it all depends on how much money we appropriate. So right now we're saying $350 million. If next year we think $400 million, next year we could say $600 million. Whatever that number is, we have the ability to impact that. And the more that we put in, the quicker we close those adequacy gaps, get school districts to full funding, and eventually we get to the point where the state is indeed holding up its responsibility, which is over 50% of the funding for school districts. That is our responsibility, and that is what we are on the path toward doing. So that was a long answer about the committee chairs, but that's the most important committee that I chair.
It's insightful. I think we need to know that. Now, in the final moments we have left here, I'd like you to talk about your commitment to two things I know that you're very focused on, and that's jobs and also minority businesses or the business community, not just minority businesses, but I know recently you spoke to several of the minority suppliers and contractors organization. You were there and gave some real timely information, and also know that there were some hiring events and job sponsorships that you were very instrumental in promoting in the area.
Right. Well, one of the things that I've noticed is that when people say the state is broke, well, that's really not true. The state is spending money. And my position is that if the state is going to spend money, why shouldn't they be spending that money with small businesses, with diverse businesses that are located in our communities? Everything is not the big one place size fit all kind of thing. We've got a lot of small businesses, and a lot of these businesses want to do business with the state and other sectors. So I've just been pushing a lot of what I call supplier diversity, making sure that the sectors that intersect with the state, meaning that we have some state oversight, some state regulation. A couple of those sectors would include hospitals, would include the utility companies, would include railroads. So I have been introducing legislation that is asking those sectors to start reporting what their minority or diverse spending numbers are. What we're finding is that they're very low. Not that they don't do business, but they don't do a lot of business with diverse vendors. And so once we have an opportunity to examine their numbers, now we can start talking about ways to improve it. The utility companies like ComEd, NICOR, Peoples have really embraced what we're trying to do and are working aggressively to try to increase their minority spending. Not only through working with contractors. When they work with local contractors hire local people. And so there's a benefit to making sure that we support vendors in our communities and contractors and companies in our communities. Other sectors that are warming up to the idea, the railroads are starting to understand what we're trying to do and are working to do a little bit better. But one sector that I think we really need to push on is the hospitals. There is a process by which hospitals, when they want to grow or contract, have to come through the state and get permission to do so. With the supplier diversity side of this, what I learned is that in 2013, hospitals spent $2.5 billion in construction. Less than 5% of that spend was with diverse vendors. 5%. Can you imagine 5% of $2.5 billion? That's not a lot of money. And so I'm saying, well, you're building these hospitals, why are you not doing more with diverse vendors, with minority vendors? And so again, we're pushing on them to try to start doing more. An event that you attended was talking about how that organization is trying to work in that vein. I've been attending supplier diversity fairs where vendors are coming out and having dialogue with not only hospitals, state universities as well. The utility companies have been engaging in these events because we need to start creating the mechanism to bring the diverse suppliers to the big vendors, to the companies, so they can start to build relationships and they can see that there is a need to spend more of their dollars with some of these smaller companies. Because again, we often say small business is the backbone of our economic society, and that's true. So why are we not giving more of those dollars? And many of these companies are Fortune 500 companies. They have $1 billion in revenue. Why shouldn't they be spending more of it with smaller, diverse companies in our communities? And again, I'm a firm believer that when we give them more, they give back to the community because they hire locally. They give the young men and women that we talk about, that we want to have these opportunities. They're the ones willing to do it. But we have to encourage more of the spending with those companies in order to create those opportunities for young people and even some older people in our community that want to have this opportunity as well. So I've really been focusing on supplier diversity a lot, just simply saying that if these folks are spending money, spend some of it with some of these companies as well, because there are a ton of small businesses out there. There are a lot of minority businesses out there, both ethnic minorities as well as women contractors. You know, they're ready and willing to do the work. They just need the opportunity. So we're always pushing jobs and job opportunities when and wherever we can do so.
Mm-hmm. Well, Representative Davis, you've given us a political science class, a civics class, and economics, all in the short time that we've been here. In order to contact your office, you've given us the website, but is there a telephone number if someone wants to call your office and get some information sent out? Do you have a number you'd like to give us? Well,
actually, I think I'm kind of old school in that respect, so I prefer people to contact our offices so we can have interaction with them. Mm-hmm. Our office number is area code 708-799-7300. Again, 708-799-7300. We're located at 1912 West 174th Street in East Hazelcrest. So we're just north of 175th and Dixie Highway. I'm a full-time representative. I only have one person working in my office. So if you call, either she's going to answer the phone or I'm going to answer the phone.
Okay.
So you can rest assured that between the two of us, whatever your issue or concern is, your call is not going to get lost in any way. And we encourage people to call our offices, tell us how they feel about things, share their thoughts on a particular bill or issue that's coming up in Springfield, or if they just want to tell me how they feel about things or an opportunity to get to know their representative, please feel free to call the office. Again, 708-799-7300. And if somebody wants to research the bills that we have introduced in Springfield, learn more about them, learn who representatives are, and even find out who their representative is if they don't know, that website is www.ilga.gov.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And thank you for once again tuning in to this edition of Take Another Look.